My name is Ofori-Boateng. I am the founder and director of a national NGO called HERP Conservation Ghana. HERP Ghana is West Africa's first amphibian and reptile conservation society. As you may be aware, my passion has been to help conserve lesser known species, and this obviously includes amphibians and reptiles. But in the past, I have been involved with the Ofori specialist group, and I've done a lot of research and conservation work on the advacs, for example. Now, I founded HERP Ghana because I felt the need to use amphibians as flagships to protect biodiversity in general. And I'm very glad to say that in my lifetime I have been able to realize this, of course, with the support of a very strong team and our funding partners such as Rainforest, Weekly Fund for Nature, Future for Nature Foundation, and many other funding partners. Now, one of the unique things that HERP Conservation Ghana has done recently is to establish a very large reserve in a key biodiversity area in Ghana, in the Togo Volta Highlands. Originally, the intention was to protect the last remaining population of a critically endangered frog called the whistling frog that is endemic to this site. But fortunately for us, and working with a lot of stakeholders, we have been able to protect other species. Most of them are endangered mammals as well. So as we speak, we have 11 other IUCN threatening species that are protected by this reserve. And of course, one of the challenges that we had to deal with on a daily basis is the hunting of wildlife in this reserve, and this includes the deers and the duikers, the antelopes, but also of frogs, which may surprise you. And so in this video I try to throw a bit more light on some of the issues surrounding bushmeat consumption and some of the things that we've been doing to keep it in this reserve. And one of the main causes of wildlife decline today in my country is the harvest, or what we locally call bushmeat harvest and consumption. It's a huge problem that we've been battling with for years and years, and it's multifaceted. It's not an easy thing to talk about, but I'm going to try to give you some perspectives from where I stand now on what are some of the causes of these bushmeat hunting and subsequent decline in wildlife populations, and what is driving them, and what I think could be done to keep or reduce or sustainably hunt so that we can preserve these wildlife populations. But before I do that, probably it's also worth mentioning that unlike many countries, that wildlife consumption in West Africa, and that includes my country Ghana, is very widespread. I would say that probably 99 or 100% of the people in this country has at least tasted bushmeat once in their lifetime. And how did we get ourselves into this situation? It's basically because we all grew up in villages and rural settings. And in these rural settings, people are farmers mostly. They grow food crops, and they produce the food that they eat basically. But protein is a very expensive commodity to come by. And so most farmers put out snares and traps or own a gun to kill an antelope or deer or a rabbit, a grass cutter, and when they are successful at doing this, it means that They save the family a lot of money, and this is meat that will be shared for the family for a very long time. Now, because we grew up getting used to the taste of these bushmeat, now everybody, likes bushmeat. They've developed a taste for it, and not that they actually need to eat bushmeat now. People have moved on from the cities. They are wealthy. They work in banks and hospitals, and they live in the city. But they have acquired this unique taste for bushmeat, and so they would pay whatever it costs to be able to have a taste of it once in a while. And so this is a big driver of the bushmeat trade locally. And recently, one other thing that is also driving the trade or bushmeat trade is the fact that we've also had this surge of what we call gold rush, locally called galamsey. Obviously, Ghana was historically called the Gold Coast, and there's this mad rush for gold in the country, which has attracted a lot of foreign nationals from Asia and other countries into our country. And these people also put a lot of demand on all sorts of things, animals, including wild animals, pangolins, frogs, and all sorts. And this has also become a very huge driver of the bushmeat trade and consumption in the country. Now, obviously, this demand drives the supply. So I've talked about the demand side. People's acquaintances, people, even rich people, eating bushmeat as a sign of prestige and as a sign of wealth. Of course, there's also the local need for protein at the rural level, but probably not such a major driver of the consumption of bushmeat. And then I also talked about the international bit of people coming to the country and then putting a demand, even exporting bushmeat and live animals out of the country. Now, of course, that's the demand side, but there's also the supply side. And this supply side comes from hunters. Some are professional hunters, some are farmers and part-time hunters, and they deal with the supply side. And then there are other group of people who buy these bushmeat from the hunters called local gatherers, and then they eventually transport this bushmeat into the market center in the urban areas where they end up in the restaurants. So why do these hunters or local people persistently going out there, risking their lives, spending weeks in the middle of the forest trying to kill an antelope or a small rabbit? Basically, it's because they do not have many options. The job of hunting has become a very difficult one, very challenging one. And when you talk to most hunters, they would not want to go on hunting, but it appears that they do not have many options in life. And to be able to keep their families, they have to go on and meet the demand by going on and snaring or hunting or killing these poor animals. So that brings me to a very critical point. What do we do to be able to mitigate or resolve this crisis? Because obviously a lot of animals are at risk. When you go to some of very well protected sites, even in Ghana, you see very beautiful forests, but you would expect to see animals, but you rarely do encounter animals. The animals there obviously, but when you compare these sites to areas like in Uganda, in Kenya, where bushmeat consumption is not a problem, you realize that encounter rates with particularly large mammals and birds have declined sharply over the time. So it's really a big problem and a driver of local extinctions, particularly of already endangered and threatening species. So how do we resolve these issues? I have a few thoughts which are not exhaustive, but based on experiences that I've had working with communities to establish protected area in collaboration with Rainforest Trust and Whitley Fund for Nature. We've gathered a host of experiences, and I would like to share a few. Obviously, if you want to deal with it at a local level, trying to meet protein needs, then you need to develop alternatives. There have to be alternatives for the local people to be able to meet their protein needs. Or at least you need to be able to manage wildlife in such a way that if quotas or harvests are allowed, they are sustainably managed. And many people have tried to do this, but they have failed. They've given people alternatives in grass cutters and all that, and yet they go out there and hunt. There are a lot of perceptions about it, but our experience is that alternatives must go hand in hand with education, with a lot of education, innovative ways of engaging people and getting them to understand the need to protect biodiversity or wildlife, to get them to the point where they are willing to do something, to sacrifice, to stop, these consumption. And that is at that point that you introduce an alternative to them. And when you do that, and from my experience, we've seen a lot of successes following that approach. And another way that, of course, we could do it will also be to increase enforcement. This is something that the Ghana Wildlife Division is doing very well, protecting the wildlife reserves using military kind of style and resources, which has worked fairly well, but not entirely well. And this is something that has to be looked at. One way that we have found that really works is to educate the hunters, that is dealing with it from the supply side of things, bringing the hunters together in hunter association, using innovative ways to engage them and get them interested in conservation up till the point where they feel something for wildlife and they would rather not want to hunt wildlife, for example. And when you have been successful at getting these hunters to this level, then you provide them an alternative. And the alternative that we have provided is to train and enroll some of them into our ranger-based patrol system, which means that we've also provided some form of income to them to meet their family obligations. And because genuinely they are interested now in conservation and they don't want to harm wildlife, you are able to mitigate these challenges from the demand side of things. And one good thing about what we are doing with our NGO in partnership with our Rainforest Trust and Whitley and our many funders is that you kept it in such a way that it does not pass on to the next generation, because one hunter will train 3, 4, 5 hunters in his lifetime. And so if you're able to convert one hunter to become a conservationist, you've saved 5 other people from becoming professional hunters and causing more harm to wildlife conservation. So thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions and in providing more information to you. If there are certain areas that are of interest to you and you would wish that I delve more into it and give more example, just let me know and I'll be very happy to throw more light on these areas. Thank you very much. for your time, and see you soon.